Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Eerie News, and today we are going to go over what's unusual in our world. The date is March 21st, 2022. All right. And the first one, I thought this was a little bit unusual because sometimes you hear about things in the Bible and you think that they're unfounded. But anyway, when I read this, believe it or not, it was if this if this happened, if we were under threat of something like this now, a lot of our problems would go away because this is what they call a real problem. Anyway, it's titled Research Finds Sodom and Gomorrah Incinerated by a Fireball. According to the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah were so sinful that God decided to punish them with total destruction. It came in the form of a fireball from the sky. Researchers are describing that a meteor cloudburst incinerated the city's 8,000 inhabitants in the blink of an eye. About 1650 BC, this huge fireball exploded, leaving only ashes in its wake. 20 miles away, Jericho's walls came down, possibly caused by the same meteor. Scientists now believe that the heavenly event described in the Bible was literally a meteor that fell from the sky and destroyed everything in its path, including multiple cities and small villages. It razed a 100-acre city on the northern shore of the Jordan River Valley. It detonated about 2.5 miles above the earth, but even at that distance, the blast created a 740-mile-per-hour shockwave. There were no survivors. Humans and animals were incinerated as proven by examination of remains. There was extreme disarticulation and fragmentation of bones. According to Professor James Kennett of the University of California at Santa Barbara, he's quoted as saying, "We saw evidence for temperatures greater than 2,000 degrees Celsius. There's evidence of a large cosmic fireball close to the city called Tal el-Haman. I think one of the main discoveries is shocked quartz. These are sand grains containing cracks that form only under very high pressure. We have shocked quartz from this layer. That means there were incredible pressures involved to shock the quartz crystals. Quartz is one of the hardest minerals. It is very hard to shock." End quote. Pottery shards and building materials melted into glass, which can only be obtained through extremely high temperatures. This event was comparable to the Tunguska blast, or a smaller version of the impact that killed the dinosaurs. Soil samples found melted metals, including iron. Tal el-Haman had been settled for thousands of years, and it was 5 times larger than Jerusalem and 10 times larger than Jericho. There had been debate as to whether Tal el-Haman was the biblical city of Sodom. It's believed the event generated the story that inspired the account written in the book of Genesis. It also could have played a part in the story of the burning of Jericho in the book of Joshua. And sometimes it's the other way around. You know, we read these stories, whether it's in the Bible or any other type of ancient manuscript, and we think, oh, they were describing something, they didn't understand what it was. And literally, I could see where if something like a fireball incinerates everything, I could see how people in those times were thinking, this is the hand of God. Now, as to what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, I don't know about that. But anyway, let's get on to the other story. I thought this was really interesting. Okay, this appears in the National Enquirer. Yeah, I went to the National Enquirer. What can I say? You know, I still think about, the movie The Men in Black. Was it the first one? Yeah, it was the first one where they went to, they would use these tabloids or National Enquirer types to find all the real stories. Anyway, this is titled Scream Killer Ghost Still on the Hunt, Psycho Stalks Hometown 15 Years After Death. Bloodthirsty Gainesville Ripper Danny Rolling has continued to haunt his hometown nearly 15 years after the execution of the savage serial killer who inspired the Scream slasher franchise. That's the word of paranormal experts and spook witnesses who chillingly claim Rolling's spirit stalked his childhood home in Louisiana more than 3 decades after the knife-wielding sicko brutally murdered 5 college students in Florida. Rolling was arrested for the senseless bloodbath in 1990, and the 6'5" psycho claimed a demonic personality called Gemini possessed him and made him a monster. The Twisted Terror ultimately confessed to slaughtering 8 and was put to death by lethal injection for the Gainesville slayings in 2006. But his horror story didn't end there. Sheila Jackson and her husband live in the killer's former Shreveport home. And in the Discovery Plus docuseries Scream, The True Story, she told paranormal experts Steve Shippey and Cindy Kaza, "A ghost is in my house." The residence is also a rolling tried to gun down his dad, James. Bloodstained curtains from that violent day in 1990, as well as a cabinet with a bullet hole, remain in the home. Why would you keep that in your home? God. What's more, Sheila said she and her hubby spotted objects flying through the air and were physically attacked by a ghost multiple times a week. Sheila claimed her spouse once felt like somebody was trying to cut his nipples off. Oh boy. But when paranormal investigator Shippey and psychic medium Kaza visited the home, they said all hell broke loose. Kaza called Rolling Spirit one of the most manipulative she'd ever encountered. The medium said she'd talked to the part of Danny who presented himself as a victim, but also met his sinister side. She explained Rolling attempted to get her to feel sorry for him, but he quickly switched to the aspect of his soul that was dark and full of rage. However, Kaza said she also sensed something inhuman was present, so the team brought in a Catholic demonologist to perform an exorcism. Sheila said the house is now very silent, but the investigators caution there's no telling how long such peacefulness would last. I don't know. Let me ask you. Would you move into a home? Okay, we don't even have to go as far as, if you have you find out, hey, not only was there a murderer, well, he didn't actually he attempted to kill his dad. I don't know what the exact story. By the way, Gainesville is very close to where I live at, and I remember the Gainesville murder. And I believe he was accused of 8, but they suspect that he was responsible for other murders. But would you move into a house where somebody like this lived, and that there was bloodstained curtains and a hole in the... And I know there's people that say, well, yeah, that would be interesting, but there's a part of me that's like, nah, you know what? And I'm pretty good about things like this, unless it was like practically given to me. And even then, I would strip that place down and I wouldn't keep any curtains. I wouldn't keep anything from there. And it would have to be one heck of a deal. And I mean one heck of a deal. But anyway, let's go on to another story. This is from earthfiles.com. It's reported by Linda Moulton Howe. She's very well known in the UFO investigation field. This has to do with a place called Tappen, North Dakota, encounters with non-humans. All right. Now, apparently what happened was about 60 miles straight east of Bismarck, North Dakota, is the small farming community of Tappen in Kidder County. From a USGS Terra server satellite, Tappen's farmland looks like an odd game board because crops are planted in circles to make center pivot sprinkler irrigation easier. There have been many unusual animal deaths and disappearances in the region. Not far to the northeast is the Chase Lake National Wildlife Refuge, where 29,000 American white pelicans disappeared from the refuge in May of 2004. The next spring, in 2005, about 18,000 adult pelicans returned, but 8,000 white pelican baby chicks mysteriously died, perhaps from West Nile virus. Further south of Chase Lake is the Rustler Lake Waterfowl Protection Area. For 6 straight years between 1999 to 2004, thousands of ring-billed gulls and double-crested cormorants died, challenging the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to understand why the die-offs should be so persistent year after year. Farmers in Tappen, with a current population of about 200 people, have also been challenged by mysterious deaths and disappearances of livestock. One of those families is Myra and Tori Brees, both in their late 40s, who have lived in Tappen all their life. Their 5 children are Tessa, 23, Trista, 20, Evan, 16, Tia, 11, and Marshall, 3. Let me see this pictures. All right. The Brees farm has 1,200 acres and 100 head of cattle. The family's main source of income. For fun, 16-year-old Evan Brees and his 11-year-old sister Tia have raised 6 hogs in a corral not far from the house. A half mile beyond the pig corral, Tory Brees found one of his cattle dead in October 2005 just over a small embankment at the edge of a dugout water pond. Tory admits he did not examine the dead cow closely at the time, but realized a few months later on April 6, 2006 that coyotes and other predators had not touched the carcass. Tory Brees, cattle rancher, Tappen, North Dakota, the predator is quoted as saying, "The predators never ate on her." That is something I just don't understand. In fact, I can tell you that up the gully from where that dead cow was in October of 2005, I had lost a big sucking calf, about a 900-pounder. I had some feed out there, and one overate and bloated. And the coyotes devoured that thing in about 5 days. It was gone. Just a little bit of hide and a couple of bones. That's it. So, that's the contrast. These two critters were that close together. That cow was never bothered, but this other calf was eaten within the matter of a few days. In April 6 of 2006, Evan Brees encountered a wedge-shaped craft near the water pond. The reason Tory Brees paid attention to the long-dead cow on April 6, 2006 was that something very strange entered the Brees farm near the water pond on the other side of a small embankment about 30 feet from the dead cow. Afterward, as Tory and his family explored the land around the water pond, Tory found a large disc-shaped pattern etched on the dead cow's hide next to two triangular punctures. The disc was overlaid by 6 lines. The odd pattern had been created by cutting away the sun-bleached surface hair to expose the deeper, blacker part of the hair. Oh, that's weird. But what happened before the family found the odd pattern in triangular punctures on the long-dead cow is what 16-year-old Evan Brees saw near the water pond at 12:30 a.m. on April 6, 2006. Evan had left the farmhouse around midnight to go check the cows that were ready to calve. With him was his cattle dog, Buster. The cows seemed fine, and Evan and Buster were heading back to the farmhouse when Evan saw a light flash that seemed to curve over a hill to the east of them. He started walking toward the pond and said he could see blue beams flashing repeatedly. As Evan reached the top of a hill, he was looking down on a wedge-shaped craft at the far end of the water pond, about 140 yards away. Shining from large ovals in the side of the object was blue light. In the satellite image of the farm below, the craft is depicted as the blue triangle on the east side of the pond in front of the dead cow. Now, this is for those of you viewing the video. There's a small map that shows the layout. Evan Brees, who was 16 at the time, said, "Just as I was reaching the top of the hill where there's an embankment down to the dugout or the water pond, I got to the top of it and saw a UFO sitting by the dugout." And they show here some pictures of what he saw. He drew some pictures of what he saw. The UFO looked triangular shaped to me and had like an oval shaped lights on it that were real pale blue with beams shining out. They were real big from what I could see, and it looked like the blue beams, could bend over hills. When they would shine over the embankments down there, it looked like they could bend right over them. And this is like a question and answer session. And he's asked, it was as if they were looking for something? Yeah. How big do you think this triangle was? About 40 feet long, I suppose. How wide do you think the triangle was? Probably about 20 feet. So it was about half as wide as it was long. Yeah. How high would it be from the ground up? Probably 6 or 7 feet. It was pretty narrow from the top to the bottom. Yeah, it was real low profile. We just stood there and looked at it for probably 30 seconds, something like that. Even he, Buster the dog, was in shock. Even your dog was in shock? Yeah. If it was something that he knew what it was, like he knows vehicles and all that stuff, so he would have run up to it right away and tried to be its buddy. But he even sat and looked at it with me. Did he whine or shiver or anything? No, because after a certain amount of time that we looked at it, he shot down there after it. As your dog starts running towards a triangular vehicle, what happened? I just sat and watched it until finally I see him Buster from kind of the glow of the blue beams, and then I could see him running down there, and then pretty soon he started barking Then the craft took off. It was out of there. When it took off, did it make noise? What happened? Completely silent, not a sound. That must have been eerie. Yes, it was strange. As it took off, did it take off slowly first and then speed up, or what? It just kept up a certain speed until it went all the way up, and then I couldn't see it no more. After it zipped away, what did you and Buster do? Ran back home and came in, woke Mom and Dad and told them what it was. Then there's an editor's note here. It says, by the time that Evan reached the house, Myra and Tori Brees had woken up by a sound that they had not heard before, which shook the windows in the house. A roaring sound, said Tori. Evan heard it also as he ran home. Tori Brees, the father, said, that craft that he seen sitting there was sitting between the banks of the water hole on the east side, on the far side of the water. And that craft was sitting on the same side that the dead cow carcass was. All right. Another question. So whatever was in the triangular craft that set down by the waterhole might have made the calling card symbol in the hide of the already dead cow? Right. Could very well have. And you know, all my neighbors are cattlemen and have looked at it, the dead cow hide pattern. They couldn't determine when this had been put on the cow. I know it was not on the cow last fall, so the strange pattern had to have gotten on after the hair fading from sun bleaching because it was a black Angus cow. Well, the reason of the black hair pattern is because wherever you put this mark and you cut away the bleached hair, whatever etched that on there, cut it on there, or whatever word you want to use. Done it a long time after this cow had died. Where Evan thought the point of the triangular craft was, the Brees family found a circular indentation in the grass. Where the wider end of the triangular craft would have been, the family thought there were also two more indentations in the grass, but fainter. Their speculation is that the grass indentations were made by the weight of the craft on some kind of round landing pods. Blue aerial lights moves oddly near farm. 4 months later, on July 20th, 2006, around 11 p.m., Tori was helping one of his neighbors whose car was being repaired. The two men were headed to pick up the car when they both saw a blue light in the night sky. The blue light was making an L-shaped pattern as if searching for something. Tori would stop the car to watch more carefully. At the same time, the blue light would stop instantly. When he moved the car, the light would move very rapidly. For more than half hour, Tori repeatedly stopped and moved the car, and the light would react by stopping instantly and moving rapidly as well. Eventually, the blue light took off rapidly. Tori said he wondered, could the blue light be the same craft that set down near the water hole in April? Then August 2006, strange lights move in grid patterns over the farm. Then in August, about 2.5 miles northeast of the farmhouse, Tori was moving cattle out of his bull pasture. Myra and the kids were about a mile away. Tori was on his motorcycle that had a broken headlight, so there was no light on the ground, but suddenly in the sky, lights appeared that moved around in odd searching patterns for at least an hour. Tori Brees said, I got to the crest of the hill and looked southeast, and there in the gullies I see some real bright lights. They weren't a blue light, they weren't a green light, they were just lights, and very bright, more like a car headlight. I stopped the bike and sat there and watched. It was totally silent, but there was like tens of lights, not 2 or 3 lights. There was a bunch of them. I started the bike and went down so I could move the cattle through the gate. As I got down to the gate on the bike, one of these lights came in our direction. I started getting a little concerned because it started illuminating the pasture to the south of us, almost like daylight. It illuminated acres, like 30 or 40 acres. These things would come at us. They were ways off, about 2 miles away. Then all of a sudden they would divide into like 3 lights and go. Well, if you took an intersection sign and drew a straight line down the middle and 2 branching off to the side, then they would go down into the gullies, and you could see one for a while, and then one would come up from the other side, and then another would do the same. They did this pattern over and over. Whatever they were doing, was it like a searching operation? Yes, it was like they were looking for something. Myra, Tessa, and Evan, did they have any reaction themselves? They were scared, and yet they were curious. They wanted to watch it. Okay. And there's going to be a part 2 to this, and I'll get onto it tomorrow night. Apparently, they also had some type of encounter by I guess, another part of the farm. But you know what? You hear some of these things, and it's here's this little town which has got 200 inhabitants in North Dakota. And here's a family that living there they're raising animals, mostly pigs, it sounds like, and calves. And you would think, what is it that this thing is searching for? And that very strange pattern that was made on the cow's hide. I want to say, it's almost like, were they trying to imitate, branding? How once upon a time they would brand cattle. I don't know. It's very unusual. We'll get to part 2 tomorrow. Okay. Next story is titled, out of the Vintage News, Ancient Sarcophagus Uncovered Beneath Notre Dame Cathedral. For those of you who don't know or don't remember, I want to say, was it 2018? Notre Dame Cathedral caught fire. And luckily, not all of it was damaged. And there was, I believe the source was that they were doing renovations on it. There was some type of accident, but the good part of it is that because of the renovations, certain articles or things that would have been in there, they weren't damaged. But anyway, by the way, this is an 800-year-old cathedral, so there's bound to be a lot of unusual things. All right. The archaeologists from the National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research were conducting the excavation as a precautionary measure before the installation of scaffolding needed to restore the cathedral's wooden roof ridge. The roof, as well as the Notre Dame's 106-year-old Gothic spire, were destroyed during an April 2019 fire, which is believed to have been caused by an electrical short. The excavation site, which lies beneath a stone layer dating back to the 18th century, with some lower levels going back as far as the 13th century, has uncovered a host of artifacts. According to France's Culture Ministry, Dominique Garcia with the INRAP said the finds could help improve historians' understanding of funeral practices in the Middle Ages. Wow. The tombs unearthed are of remarkable scientific quality. The lead sarcophagus in particular shows signs of impressive conservation despite being wrapped and warped by the weight of stones and the earth. Using a mini endoscopic camera to look inside, archaeologists were able to glimpse pieces of fabric, hair, and a pillow of leaves on top of the head, a well-known phenomenon when religious leaders were buried, according to Christophe Besnier, the excavation's lead archaeologist. The fact that these plant elements are still inside means the body is in very good state of conservation. It's believed the sarcophagus likely belonged to a high dignitary who died sometime in the 14th century. Along with the aforementioned discoveries, archaeologists have thus far uncovered a 13th century rood screen, an architectural piece that separates the altar from the nave, as well as an underground heating system dating back to the 19th century, and a pit immediately below the cathedral floor, which is believed to have been made around 1230 when the Notre Dame was under construction. Several painted sculptures have also been unearthed, including those of vegetables, a pair of carved hands, and a bust of yet-to-be-identified bearded man, and artifacts dating back to the original church. It's been restored and renovated numerous times over its 800-year existence. And then it goes on to say, archaeologists have until March 25th, 2022 to finish their excavation, at which time the reconstruction project resumes. This is to ensure the cathedral is ready to welcome back the public by the current Easter 2024 deadline set by France's President Emmanuel Macron. So, yeah, they're working on that. Okay, let's go on to weird again. This is out of a Singular Fortean. It's titled, Woman Reports Sightings of Tall, Owl-like Being with a Bright Glowing Red Eyes Near O'Hare International Airport. And I picked this one. It's weird, but you know what? For years, people, I want to say since 2017, people have been reporting Mothman-like or winged humanoid-like creatures around Chicago, and there was even one in O'Hare. And that's why I think this is very interesting. All right. Um, Manuel Navarrete of UFO Clearinghouse recently received the following report from a woman who claimed that she and her friend encountered a creature with bright red eyes and a big black body while parked at a construction site near Chicago's O'Hare International Airport around 10 p.m. on March 5th. And this is what she said. It's quoted as saying, "I was out driving around with a guy I had just started talking to. We were out by the airport just cruising around listening to music and getting to know one another. We decided to park to smoke some bud and one thing led to another. We were in the back seat when he looked up and started screaming, 'What the F?' over and over again. It was then that we felt like something bumped into the side of the car, like when someone slams up on the side of your ride. I sat up and saw a pair of bright red eyes and a big black body looking into the driver's side window into the back seat. It scared the hell out of both of us. I both started screaming out loud. This thing kept looking into the car, and then it just disappeared. A security guard showed up, then two more showed up. They made us get out of the car and started asking us why we were there, but after looking at us, they started asking about what we had seen. We told them, and they screamed at us to get dressed and leave." Navarrete said that after some convincing, he was able to speak with a witness over the phone. "I contacted the witness via email, and after much assurance, she agreed to an interview over the phone," he said. The investigator called and spoke with a woman, whom he described as a 20-year-old Hispanic woman. Her companion that evening, he said, was a 26-year-old man and also Hispanic. According to what the witness told Navarrete, she and her friend had been out driving around when they decided to stop at a construction site near the airport to talk and smoke marijuana. No one was around at the site given the late hour, and the couple decided to park near the entrance but still out of the way to avoid law enforcement. The quote is saying, "For the witness' sake, I asked her to please skip the details and to please just stick to the sighting itself," said Navarrete, at which time she recounted the details of the incident in the following way. She described the entity as being tall and thinly built with bright red eyes that were glowing. She also described feeling the car move as if someone had slammed against the side of it, followed by her partner starting to scream. The witness described the entity as bending down to peer into the window, and from the brief glimpse she saw of it when she sat up, described it as owl-like. Her partner told her that it looked like his eyes were set into the entity's shoulders. The witness stated that the creature was gone within a few seconds and that almost immediately the security guards arrived. When asked how long from the creature leaving to the security guards' arrival, the witness said that she was certain the guards had to have seen the creature take off as they arrived. When Navarrete asked the witness about the security guard, he said she told him that the guards asked them to get out of the car, and seeing the state of them, asked them why they were there and what they had seen. The guards questioned them for a few minutes, took their information, then told them to finish getting dressed and leave immediately, Navarrete said. She said they were both told that the next time they were seen at this site, they would be arrested immediately. Following that encounter, the witness reportedly left and the young woman was dropped off at home. Navarrete said she asked about the second witness's contact information, but the woman told him that the man did not want to be contacted and that they had only talked a few times after the event, but had not gone out again. I wonder why. He must have been like, oh, hell no. The witness then expressed her desire to conclude the interview, and I thanked her for her time, Navarrete added. He explained that the construction site where the sighting reportedly happened is on Highway 72 and that he planned to conduct a field investigation of the area soon. Navarrete speculated the construction could be part of the expansion project currently happening at the airport, but said the details will be confirmed with further investigation. Research by investigator Tobias Wayland into incomplete construction projects at O'Hare showed that a major expansion for Terminal 5 is currently underway, but is located on the southeastern edge of the airport's campus, directly opposite of the reported sighting location. However, the I-490-I-90 interchange project is still underway adjacent to the sighting area, and while not attached to the airport, would explain the construction site's location. This makes it unlikely that the witness encountered the coordinated security response mentioned in other encounters in and around the airport. Navarrete promised that any information obtained during the field investigation will also be on the UFO Clearinghouse website and shared with Phantoms and Monsters Fortean research team. Phantoms and Monsters is the one maintained by Lon Strickler. As of right now, this is an ongoing investigation and further information will be posted as it becomes available, Navarrete said. The Singular Fortean Society partners with both UFO Clearinghouse and Phantom and Monsters to investigate anomalous sightings and will update this article with any new information as it is received. O'Hare International Airport has been the epicenter of recent winged humanoid sightings in the Lake Michigan Mothman investigation, with over a dozen sighting reports coming from the airport itself since August of 2019, and many more reported in the surrounding communities. Reports from the larger investigations have come from every state bordering Lake Michigan and date back to 1957. This report constitutes the latest thing in a string of Mothman sightings from within a few 100-mile radius surrounding Lake Michigan, including every state bordering the Great Lake. These sightings ostensibly began in the spring of 2017, but more historical accounts are being reported as more people become aware of the phenomenon. They generally take place in the evening or at night, often in or near a park or natural area and around water. Witnesses constantly described a large gray, brown, or black bat or bird-like creature, although in a small number of cases the creature was described as insect-like, sometimes with glowing or reflective red, yellow, green, or orange eyes, and humanoid features. Many of the sightings are also sometimes seen only briefly or are described only as a flying creature with few details, which some, although certainly not, are not all the encounters. A number of associated high strangeness incidents have also occurred alongside the creature sightings. These include reports of UFOs, other anomalous flying creatures, and mysterious humanoids, parapsychological phenomena, and bizarre events experienced by those investigating the sightings. Okay, see, there's something going on in Chicago and in that area. Okay, and I think this last one, this one's way out there, and it's from the U.S. Sun. It's titled "Danger Zone: Are You a Dark Empath? Scientists Reveal New Most Dangerous Personality Type." A new dangerous character trait dubbed dark empathy has been identified by scientists, but do you possess it? Recent research has found that individuals who boast dark personality traits such as narcissism can still retain high levels of cognitive and affective empathy. The study, recently published in Personality and Individual Differences, identifies these types of people as dark empaths. Empathy can be broken up into three categories. The first is cognitive, which describes the intellectual understanding of someone else's feelings without sensing them. Next is affective, or feeling someone else's emotions as your own. And the third is compassionate, a combination of cognitive and emotional empathy. Individuals are considered dark empaths when they possess cognitive and or affective empathy, as well as characteristics from the dark triad, a collective term for three dark personality traits: Machiavellism, I'm sorry, my tongue is tied today. Machiavellism, psychopathy, and narcissism. Traditionally, researchers have found that those with darker characteristics are often associated with a lack of empathy. And while this new data, which the researchers gathered from a group of 1,000 individuals, certainly reinforces that, it also indicates a strong presence for the dark empath group. As expected, we found a traditional dark triad group with low scores in empathy, about 13% of the sample, the study's author said. We also found a group with lower to average levels across all traits, about 34% were typicals, and a group with low dark traits and high levels of empathy, about 33% were empaths. However, a fourth group of people, the dark empaths, was clearly evident. They had higher scores on both dark traits and empathy, about 20% of our sample. Interestingly, this latter group scored higher on both cognitive and affective empathy than the dark triad and typical groups they added. The team said they were not entirely surprised that the dark empaths scored as high as they did in the cognitive and affective empathy sections. This makes sense in a way. As to manipulate others for your own gain, or indeed enjoy the pain of others, you must have at least some capacity to understand them, they explained. The researchers also found that the dark empaths were more indirectly aggressive than typicals and empaths. While empathy did limit the group's level of aggression, it did not eliminate it completely. Furthermore, it appeared that the group had a conscience and may even dislike their dark side, with the negative emotions being a response to their self-loathing, the team said. The new findings are shedding light on those with dark triad traits, as well as forcing clinical psychologists to look at empathy in a new way. A dark empath may actually be more dangerous than a more cold and unfeeling dark triad type, because the so-called dark empath can draw you in closer and do more harm as a result. This is Ramani Durvasula, PhD, a clinical psychologist, was quoted as saying, "The closer you are to someone, the more you can hurt them." Wow. In other words, they're really good. I guess they pretend to have empathy or caring, and that's one of the things that you hear sometimes with psychopaths that have committed murders, that they don't get it. Let's say they've done away with their wives or girlfriends, and instead of being all broken up about it, 3 days later they're going out to party, and then they wonder why the police is suspicious of them, because they don't get it. That they might also be stupid, but and at least that they don't even know enough to pretend. In other words, they just don't get it. But these, I guess what they're describing as dark empaths, they know how to, they probably even fool themselves that they care, but in the end they're dark. And that's interesting, because if they did this among 1,000 people, that's a large number to do a study on. That's very interesting to follow up. So, all right, guys, and that is the news. Don't forget, you can go to eerie.news, eerie.news, to catch all the latest things, because I also write some articles that I release every day. All right, and I look forward to catching you tomorrow. And again, you can go to eerie.news and just look at the articles. Sometimes I include them on the broadcast, but sometimes I don't. So till the next time, take care.